Hello, everyone. My name is Jean Tiberio, and I'm a nutritionist and a wellness coach. You're listening to Healing Outside the Box. Today is episode 205, and I'm calling it, Can Junk Food Make Us Grumpy? I could also call it the CHIP program revisited, because what I want to do is update you on some information about the CHIP program. CHIP, by the way, stands for Complete Health Improvement Program, or project. New data coming out shows that our mental status, as well as our physical status, can be improved when we switch to a healthy, plant-based whole foods diet, which is basically what the CHIP diet is, which is essentially the same as the Mediterranean diet. We're talking about a meal plan that is heavy on produce and light on meat and highly processed foods. We're not necessarily talking about zero meat, but basically a plan that has lots of fruits and veggies, nuts and seeds, olive oil, beans, and fish. Now, I devoted an entire episode to the CHIP dietary plan last year. That was episode 185, and I'll put a link to that episode in the show notes. Today I'll hit on some of the major points, and I'll update you on a recent study about how this program can improve mental status. This program was proven in many studies to reduce weight, blood sugar, blood cholesterol, especially the bad or LDL cholesterol, and something called C-reactive protein, which is a marker for inflammation. But first, I want to tell you about a wonderful surprise I had yesterday morning. As I'm writing this, yesterday was Valentine's Day, and I was at my computer doing my usual writing, and somebody buzzed my apartment from downstairs. When we asked who is it, the message was, "There are some flowers down here for you." Since I don't have a secret admirer that I know about, I'm thinking, well, maybe I have a stalker. But the flowers were actually from an organization by the name of SPUR, S-P-U-R. There was a simple note attached, and on the note there was a little pink heart and a picture which was clearly drawn by a child in grade school. The note said, "Thank you for your help." I Googled the name SPUR, since I had never heard of it, and found out that it's a nonprofit organization that is volunteer-driven and does some wonderful things with school children. Apparently, one of the things they do is schoolyard gardens. Now, a few years back, I volunteered at a local school, and we planted a school garden, complete with all kinds of vegetables and herbs. I started out by giving them a 10-minute talk on the importance of fruits and vegetables. Then we all got up with our little baby shovels, and the third graders went to work planting the tomato plants in the raised bed gardens that someone had volunteered putting together for them. The older children made a trestle for the green beans, and the first graders were in charge of getting the earthworms for the raised bed garden. And we did this by spraying some old dirt with a hose and then watched the earthworms come to the surface. Then the first graders grabbed their little plastic cups and plastic spoons, and they rounded up the worms to put in their new home. I brought a camcorder and a tripod to capture all this on video, and it was all very adorable. Well, apparently that whole scene got my name on a list, but I'm guessing a good list. So this was to thank me for my volunteer work, which was very heartwarming and certainly made my day. On their website, the SPUR people say this: "When we spur good deeds, moments become memories, strangers become neighbors, and volunteering becomes passion. We are a community of doers. Join us." So I thought that was cool. And FYI, this is something everybody could do in their hometown. Okay, so back to the episode. The title of this episode is, Can Junk Food Make Us Grumpy? Well, no one knows for sure, but there's been some recent evidence to suggest that foods that cause inflammation or oxidative damage can alter moods or even cause depression. Now, the key word there is can, because we still don't know for sure. Now, I'm not sure if I totally agree with this piece or not, but some people think that depression is about us wanting to be alone when we're sick. I guess it would make some sense maybe in terms of evolution, since people that go around hugging each other when they're sick will come down with infections. And my goodness, 1,000 years ago, that would have been a very bad thing. So I'm still not sure about all that happening in the past, but let's talk about the present. Generally speaking, people who are depressed have markers that signal inflammation. C-reactive protein is one of those markers. But what causes what? Does depression cause the inflammation? Or does the inflammation cause the depression? We actually don't know yet. We're starting to pull in some population data that may or may not be accurate, but I'll put it out there anyway. The data suggests that people who ate inflammatory foods, in other words, soda, junk foods, meat, especially fermented or cured meat, were more depressed than people who ate lower amounts of these foods. Because people are more complicated, psychologically speaking, than rats, we can't use rat studies to prove junk food eaters are more depressed than healthy food eaters. So we have to go by population studies. Studies have now been done with people who had a high plant and therefore high antioxidant diet and got a 30% reduction in C-reactive protein, which can be measured. Again, C-reactive protein is a marker for inflammation. But why? Why? This can get confusing, but let's see if we can make some sense out of it. Oxidative damage is caused by free radicals. The most obvious free radicals that we usually think of are free radicals from X-rays and the UV rays of the sun. This oxidative damage can then cause an autoimmune response by changing the chemical structure of our healthy molecules to generate new molecules that our bodies then attack. So oxidative damage turns our healthy molecules into foreign-looking molecules that our bodies attack. This attack causes inflammation. So it would certainly be helpful to reduce oxidation. Not much argument there. Antioxidants, found in fruits and vegetables, fight inflammation because they fight oxidation. But what has all this got to do with depression and anxiety? Because really, we can't say that because the rate of depression is up and the rate of junk food eating is up, that they are necessarily cause and effect. We can't say that. But there's some interesting correlation data that is starting to pop up. For example, let's look at the treatment of interferon for cancer patients. In this article put out by the NIH, it states that inflammatory mechanisms have been thought to create a role in major depression, and interferon is a pro-inflammatory drug used to treat malignant melanoma, among other diseases. They found that interferon treatment is strongly associated with major depression and that this is an important adverse reaction not to be ignored. In this study, 50% of interferon patients got major depression. In other words, doctors assumed that their cancer patients became depressed because they had cancer. But it looks like it's more complicated than that, because interferon treatment is causing inflammation, and that inflammation may physically be triggering depression. I'll give you a link to that study in the show notes. Here's another study. In this NIH study, they were able to prove a direct relationship between endotoxins and symptoms of depression and agitation. Now, there's a lot of different endotoxins, but when we use this word, we give the example of a toxin that's produced by a pathogenic bacteria, such as the toxin inside the botulinum bacteria. And this toxin is actually what causes the botulism. So endotoxins dramatically increase inflammation and symptoms of depression. So we still don't know for sure, but it's starting to quack like a duck. It seems that a lot of things that cause inflammation are causing depression, or certainly the two are going hand in hand. Scientists are now studying the question of whether or not oxidative stress, remember the free radicals, are accompanied by depression so much that it suggests a direct correlation. In other words, possibly the more oxidative stress, the more depression. And as we now know, oxidative stress changes our molecules such that our bodies consider them to be the enemy and go on the attack. The resulting inflammation causes a lot of things, and it's starting to look like we can add depression to that list. So oxidation is bad, and antioxidants are good. Can we make a leap of faith and suggest that a diet like the chip diet or the Mediterranean diet, which is high in antioxidants and low in soda, junk food, and meat, may help with depression? Let's go back to the chip diet and talk about that again. It's called the Complete Health Improvement Program or Project. This is a community-based nutrition and lifestyle program that encourages a whole foods, plant-strong eating regimen. It also encourages moderate exercise and plenty of social interaction. The goal is to educate the public on the concept of the power of nutrition as medicine. The original program was a pilot study that went on for 4 weeks, and the results were published in 1998. It consisted of mostly unrefined plant foods, lots of fiber, and was relatively low in animal fat. It did not restrict calories or portion size. There was fish on the diet, but because it was low in animal foods, there was almost no cholesterol. The researchers also gave them plenty of encouragement and positive reinforcement throughout the program. And it seems like common sense to us now, but lots of studies have shown that positive reinforcement, and basically TLC, works well for improving people's chances of lasting change. In the study, the subjects were given this TLC 4 times per week. Now that sounds like a lot, but who doesn't want to be told they're doing great about 4 times a week? These people also initially recorded their intake in food logs, and the results were that all of the numbers, their weight, blood sugar, total cholesterol, and blood pressure, went down. Their LDL cholesterol and triglycerides also dropped. Their mean fasting blood sugar dropped by almost 20 points. They began socializing more and generally reported feeling better about themselves. So in addition to their weight and blood sugars improving, they felt psychologically better. They reported feeling less stress in general. Their sleeping habits improved. In other words, less insomnia or waking up in the middle of the night. And they improved their feelings of self-worth or self-esteem. They also reported that they felt less easily angered. In other words, they didn't have a short fuse. Now, we could argue here that some of this came about because they were successful at meeting their weight loss goals, which helped them feel more confident. And the improved weight loss literally made them feel like they were less of a failure, if they did feel like they were a failure. If their clothes are fitting better, maybe they feel like going out socially and meeting people. And then there's that sense of accomplishment, which I feel is always underrated. But maybe there is something more going on. If they have diabetes and the blood sugars return to normal, they may feel less fatigued. But maybe there is something more going on. Only time will tell, I suppose. Then maybe the next question is, can people logistically keep this up? After all, 4 weeks isn't much time. So they did a study where they followed these people for 18 months. And they found that most were able to maintain reductions in their meat, dairy, and eggs. But junk food was a bit harder. Some of them tended to slip back a bit, but not to their original levels, which is really what the researchers wanted to see. Another thing that was interesting was even though they were not told to restrict their calories or portions, they continued to eat fewer calories, and they kept most of the weight off. Now, I know some skeptics might feel that it's easier to eat a plant-based diet if you're Oprah Winfrey and you have your own chef. or you're just rich enough to shop at Whole Foods every week. Well, this theory was also studied. A group went down to the poor section of our country, Appalachia, and they went to a place where the poverty rate is 35% and 18% of the population is uninsured. They did the same study, and they got fairly similar results. What did they have in common? Well, a meal plan that works, and I think maybe this is most important when it comes to fighting depression. They got positive encouragement and support from professionals. That attaboy or attagirl actually may go a long way. So what's my bottom line here? Lately, I've been feeling that I'm swimming against the tide when I speak to people who want to believe that a ketogenic diet is the way to go for weight loss. You will lose weight on a ketogenic diet, and I've admitted that before. But as I've said before, and I'll say again, a ketogenic diet is high in free radicals, oxidative saturated fats, inflammation-causing chemicals in the meats, and it's low in healthy antioxidants, which come from fruits and starchy vegetables, among other things. Now, we also know that a ketogenic diet may affect your brain in ways that are not in line with your psychological health. Just food for thought. That's all I have for you today. Be well and stay tuned next week for another episode of Healing Outside the Box.